Welcome to the Willard Morrison channel. Today, I would like to introduce you to the story, Operation Fortnite. Author, Nathaniel Brazeau. Read by, Willard Morrison. Preparation. Nate's POV tonight is preparation night. We've all been slaves and now we get a chance at freedom. Just got to enter the arena and win, right? Yeah, win. Win by killing people who were once friends. I want my freedom badly and I'm well trained. I've seen what some of my fellow residents are capable of. Some are skilled but most should be easy to take care of. That's not what I'm worried about. I know the effect and feeling killing can have on a person. I've felt it firsthand and I don't wanna feel it again. But I'm going to have to. Screw it, I'm gonna head to the cafeteria now. I'm gonna be stuck in the arena within the next couple days. Might as well take in whatever food I can get. Cam's POV the same old slop as always. They never serve us anything good. Just flavorless potatoes and rotted meat. I need the energy for tomorrow. Nate, Chris and John are gonna count on me as the gunman. Nate's the leader and strategist, Chris is the scavenger and John is a great scout. We all are good friends and have an important role to play. Good thing I've got aim. I turn around to see Nate with his cheesy emo cut and brown hair. What up, man? I say, extending my hand. Not much, just preparing. We shake hands. I breathe heavily and then ask, you ready? I know how hard this will be and how low our chances are. Ready as I'll ever be. I've studied the arena and I've decided where we'll land. I nod and let him continue. We walk towards the table to eat and Nate continues with his plan. So the battle bus should be taking us by Tilted Towers, not the best place but there is a depot nearby in between it and the snobby shores. We can head there, it won't have the best supplies but it'll save our heads. His plan upset me, we should head into the action and try and take out as many as we can. I say we go to Tilted Towers. I bellow out in rebellion. Nate looked at me as if I was stupid. Are you kidding me? Do you have a death wish? He says. Lots of people are gonna head there and you'll be lucky if you land. Chris's POV in the distance I can see a dirty blonde head and the brown emo cut. Nate and Cam? I say. A dark-skinned figure who happens to be another one of my friends comes up to me. I bet they're arguing over plans. Terrence says as he sits beside me. Yeah, I bet. I think we probably could take TT as a team but Nate's trying to play it smart and keep us safe. He's most likely to keep us alive and that's why he's the strategist. Terrence leaned back as he said this. Terrence said it best. There's so many things that could go wrong in the arena and Nate is the only one except for Terrence who can keep calm under pressure. We've died so many ways in training, and Nate's the one who took in all the mistakes and learned somewhat. I earned the highest rank in scavenging, Terrence in scouting, Cam in weapons and Nate in strategy. I'm no strategist like him but I know it's best we stick to our roles. We've got to be a perfectly synchronized team if we wanna win. A couple hours later, we're all in our dorm. The last time we'd see this place. Sure we were slaves but the way we made this room and the shit that's gone on in it, it'll actually hurt a bit to see them go. Just half an hour left till we go. Terrence says. Cam sits away, upset that we're not following his lead. So, everyone ready? Nate asked. Yeah. I respond simply. Alright, so the plan is still the warehouse in between shores and towers, then there's a camp near towers and close to the lake. After we head there, we can just follow the storm. Nate says to us. For a while after we study the plan there's just silence. Nothing to do but wait. Tonight's our last night, so we can try and get some rest. Terrence's POV Chris and Cam are asleep, but Nate lies awake restless. Probably deep in thought like he usually gets. Worried? I ask silently. Yeah, I guess you could say that. Well, talk, best to get it off your chest before we enter the bloodbath. There are so many things that could go wrong in there, I know. But we'll have each other's backs so long as everything goes to plan. I respond, this doesn't seem to help however. I'm not even worried about us. I know we'll be fine, but these others will die. All these people we worked with, eaten with, laughed with. They're gonna die just because we want our freedom. And I don't think I could live afterwards knowing I killed these poor people. I denied their freedom because I was selfish and wanted it for myself. As troubling as it is, Nate is right. I'm dying before anyone else here. I care too much for all of you. He says next. It hurts to hear him say that. Doesn't he know we'd rather die than see another one of us dead? Best just get some sleep, keep those thoughts out of our heads. And be ready for tomorrow. I tell him. You're right. Sure you're not the strategist here? He asks with a sly smirk on his face. His sense of humor is what made us get along in the first place. I'm sure. Night man. I shut my eyes and soon everything is just black. Nate's POV. I awake in a field unaware of why or how. But the first thing I notice is the deaths of everyone in different agonizing ways. Different situations that all went wrong. Chris falling off a mountain, Cam being shot down. Terrence being annihilated by the storm. All the different scenarios playing out before me. It's just far too horrific to watch. Cam's POV. I'm the first to get up and after a few minutes Nate jolts upwards panting and soaked in sweat. It's just a small wooden hut with 2 bunk beds on each side. We could hear each other breathing half the time. I may have been mad at him before but we're still allies and friends, and we're gonna have to get along somewhat to live. Bad dream? I'm sure I can guess what about. Nate only gives a slight nod. Well, let's wake the others and go eat. We'll need it. A little later we're all at the public outdoor cafeteria we all share. It's basically just a bunch of benches on gravel but the creaky wooden benches still provide a place to sit. It's not long after we're done when the loudspeaker starts going on and we hear the words we anxiously awaited and dreaded hearing. Attention all workers. The event is starting soon, all aboard the buzz. It appears our time is up. Out of the frying pan. Nate's POV. The time has come. They're dumping us into the arena. I keep telling myself I'm ready but I'm not. Chris's POV. I can't believe it. It's finally here. I don't have anything to say except shit. Terrence's POV. Fuck. 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 Cam's POV. Oh hell yeah. I'm ready to kick some ass. Nate's POV. Everyone aboard. The loudspeaker blared. One by one different squads piled on. And then our squad. Then the bus got into the air, no turning back. We flew for a bit and said goodbye to our home. Soon we reached the island's airspace. The siren started going off to let everyone know to jump. We however are waiting just a few seconds. I throw my hand up to signal the others to wait. 3, 2, 1. I jump and the others follow. I feel the air rush against my face. Usually during the glide everyone is safe but suddenly, somebody lunged at me with their multi-tool. A tool we're all given to gather materials and also use in combat. Before they could stab me I use my left hand to pull their arm under my right armpit and let their face make contact with my right elbow. I grab my own multi-tool and stab them. I flip their body over, gunfire is coming up from tilted towers and I use the body as a shield from the gunfire. Thankfully, it worked. Cam's POV. Nate's just above handling himself. Chris, Terrence and I are about to land. After a few seconds we make the landing and see Nate close to us. Nate makes landing about 100 meters away from us at the swimming pool. Chris waves over at him and Nate waves back. I'm sure he'll be fine, let's get looting. Terrence says. The 3 of us get to looting the gas station and we find some decent loot. I pick up an AR-15 and Christopher picks up a SPAS 12. Some C4, bandages, frags and tons of ammo for anything we could possibly get. We've got 12 gauge, 45. ACP, 9mm, 50 caliber etc. Have a weapon Terrence? I ask. Yeah, I got an M1911A1 over here. Also an L96A1 with a 12x zoomed scope. Got an MP5 SD3 over here. Chris yells. Keep it down, you never know there could be others around. Terrence tells him. Oh, right, sorry. Chris responds. Nate's POV. all kinds of ammo, camping supplies, survival kits, a hunting rifle, walkie-talkies. I'm basically set. Attention contenders. That's sod. The loudspeaker doesn't play during the battle royale. We have decided to add 1,000 contenders by popular demand, and these 1,000 along with 96 of you will team up against the squad of Nate, Chris, Cam, and Terrence. Happy hunting. Bringing a team together. Terrence's POV. What the fuck? I can't believe it. We're fucked. I can see the fear in Chris's eyes and I know he sees it in mine. Cam, like a dumbass, just thinks of it as more targets. Shit, 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 shit. Chris yells. Nate's POV. Fuck this. I yell, kicking over the trash can. Now we have to kill how many people? Over 1,000? How the fuck are we going to do that? I gotta get to the others right fucking now. All of this plays in my thoughts and that's when I hear the gunfire. Cam's POV. Get under cover. I yell at Terrence and Chris as the bullets fly our way. We duck behind a stone wall as gunfire comes from the hill behind the wall. Binoculars. I say to Terrence, gesturing my hand for them. Instead he uses them to scout. East at about 80 degrees. 2 guys. He yells out to me. That's all the input I need. I peek around the wall and fire my rifle their way. As I shot I could see them duck behind a tree. I've got them pinned down now. The moment one of them peeks out to shoot at us again I fire my gun and hit him in his chest. The other guy tries to make a run for it but Terrence hits him with his sniper rifle. We handled that well. Because of the gunfire there's surely more to come. Chris says. Running towards us from behind was Nate. You guys okay? He asks. Yeah, 2 guys. Let's check what they had and then head into the soccer field. I say to them. You're not the leader and you can't do everything, Cam. Chris says to me in objection. I'm sick and fucking tired of being treated like a soldier. I'm better at all of this than the rest of you. I yell at them. And it's true, fucking Nate thinks he's fit to be leader. This isn't a school, it's a battlefield. You've got to shoot at everything. Brains and plans aren't needed here. Calm the fuck down. He's got a good plan. We'll go with him. Nate says. You're not fucking giving orders. I yell at him. I was trying to calm it down and compliment you and you're gonna throw it my fucking face. Some leader material you are. He says. And now I've had enough. I drop my gun and throw a hook at Nate, dropping him to the ground after making contact with his face. He gets up and we're about to go at each other but Chris and Terrence hold us back. We break free and go at each other. I throw another punch but this time Nate was prepared. He dodges it and socks me across the face. He picks me up by the shirt and bashes my back into the stone wall. I'm trying to keep you alive, you miserable piece of shit. So you're going to fucking listen to me. Nate screams in my face. I don't know what to do other than listen for now. But I'll have my moment soon. Nate's POV. I can't fucking believe this guy. So caught up in his own ego that he can't put it aside for the good of others. Come on, we need to move. I say to the group. We had looted the soccer field and there is an abandoned house a bit to the east. We were on our way to it when once again the loudspeaker played. This is an advance of our previous announcement. The following contenders have been added to the previously stated team of 4. Trinity, Samuel, Fitzroy, Patrick, Brindavan, David, Madison, Antonio, TJ, Sharissa, Juan, Laz and Andrew. These teamed members are being dropped off in Tilted Towers. Good luck. Getting tilted. Chris's POV. Maybe we can stand a chance now, maybe we can actually win this again. The 4 of us with 11 or so others, maybe we can really do this. There's only one problem. We have to go into Tilted Towers. That's definitely a problem. Okay, now we're not as screwed. But what's the game plan? How are we getting in and out of Tilted? Terrence asked before I could. I don't know yet. Terrence, we'll definitely need your scouting abilities. Along the path we were gonna take east, there's hills just over Tilted. You can take your sniper rifle and then scout us a path in. Nate says. Terrence gives him a nod and then we move forward. Up the hill to the outside of the soccer dun and into the abandoned house from our plan. We scavenge it but don't find much to our advantage. There were however some bottles of alcohol I saw Cam shove into a bag while he thought no one was looking. We shouldn't be drinking in the field, but I suppose we all need a break in our own way. We keep moving and climb onto the hill. Terence unstraps the rifle from his back and begins looking down the scope. Right now everything we do relies on him and Nate. Terence's POV through the scope, I see nothing. Tilted is looking quiet. Too quiet. See anything? Chris asks me from behind. No. Now I'm trying to judge where they could be waiting for us. I whisper quietly to him. That's when I notice the building at the far east. It'd probably be the most strategic. It's got an exit towards the river right beside it, and we would only have to cross one major street for a few seconds to get to it. Aside from that, we'd be in tight alleyways. I think I've got them pinned down. I say to the rest of them. They're probably in that building at the far east. Probably? What if they're not? Cam asks. Then we'd have to search. I tell him. And what makes you so sure they are? Cam says to me. If they wanna survive, they'd have to play it real strategic. After I say this, he has no more objections. Typical. Alright, let's get moving. Nate says and quietly slides down the hill. The rest of us follow suit, and then he quietly leads us through the tight alleyways of Tilted, and as we crouch through it seems I'm not the only one who noticed Tilted is far too quiet. Nate seems to be on high alert. Of course anyone would be in Tilted, but something tells me that's not the case of Nate's caution right now. We keep moving slow and stealthy, and that's when we reach the one open street separating us and the building. Okay, this is risky, guys. We're gonna need to be quick. Get ready. Nate says. I take a quick deep breath, and then Nate starts to count down. 3, 2, 1. Right as his last finger goes down, the four of us book it across the street and then quickly hide behind some shrubbery and other surroundings. After a minute or two passes, we decide we're good to go and make way for the building. Hopefully this turns out fine. Into the fire. Nate's POV, the silence was almost unbearable. We got into the building expecting not to see anyone, and we expected right. Nobody was there to greet us here. Around the corner however was a group. We pulled our guns on them and they did the same. I locked eyes with the group's leader. He was a tall, light-skinned guy. You Nate and the crew? He asked me. Yeah, try and pull the trigger, you won't beat us to it. I said, ready to go in, guns blazing. However, that's not what happened. He lowered his gun and extended his hand towards me for a handshake. Name's Antonio, looks like we're on the same team now. I lower my weapon as well and we shake hands. Good to know, glad we found you guys. I say to him. Yeah, we're gonna need help with all of this. Was his response. Our first priority is to get out of Tilted Towers. Mobilize your crew, then we'll get moving. Will do. Antonio started walking off towards the others of his group, getting them up and ready to get moving. You think there's anything left in here? Chris asked me. I wouldn't think so, Tilted Towers usually gets picked clean. Feel free to take a check around though, who knows what they left behind. Just be quick, quiet, and close. Got it? He said, nodding. He then proceeded to head up the stairs of the building. Chris's POV, I could still hear the others moving downstairs, but they were no longer in sight. I can't even lie, I'm fucking terrified. I don't think I'm gonna make it through this. I have no doubts about the others, but me? I don't have much skills other than supply gathering. I'm practically just here for support, which doesn't bother me because at least I'm helping the others, but what does that say about my chances of survival? I probably should just get what I can and get back downstairs. Floor after floor, the obvious stuff has been looted, but there's always the small stuff everyone forgets to notice. A couple of bullets on the floor, loose matches, supplies, a loose bandage. All stuff that could really come in handy, especially when tons of it is gathered. It doesn't take long before I clear the whole building and I'm ready to hit the road back downstairs. But then the explosions go off. Cam's POV, it was a trap. The enemy knew we were here and rigged the wall across from us to pin us down. We've nowhere to run, but all of us were able to quickly grab cover. Nate, ammo. I yell out and I grab the magazine that was quickly tossed my way. The entire group starts firing at the enemy and Chris manages to dive into cover near us. We need a way out, now. Nate said loudly. One of the people from Antonio's group, a tall, muscular, brown-skinned guy wearing a tattered baseball cap and hoodie who I believe they called Andrew, yelled on it. He started breaking a hole in the thick brick wall. The enemy's gunfire was unrelenting as they pressed forward. One by one everyone started crawling out, leaving less and less defense for those of us still in here. The last two were me and Nate. The enemy was right at our door now and Nate looked over to me. "I'm out, can you cover me?" Nate yelled. He realized the same thing I did. Without cover fire, one of us wasn't getting through that hole. And he knew I wasn't gonna let him die with the glory. A rock and a hard place. Cam's POV, Cam, come on. You gotta get through. Nate was yelling towards me. As much as we fought, I still didn't want him to die, and I know he would do that just to get me out of here. Besides, then he'd be the one doing all the fighting. "No, you get through, I'll hold them off." I respond. "You idiot. You can't take them all on. You're just going to get yourself killed." He yelled at me over the gunfire. "You don't have any faith in me, dude. Besides, I can't let you take all the glory," I said, smirking. One of the bullets managed to graze my shin and I backed down into cover. "I better fucking see you across the river, you hear me?" he was yelling. The others were pulling him out and a grenade came my way. I dove towards the entrance and the entire wall was reduced to rubble. I was still under a never-ending amount of gunfire and only had one clip left. I loaded it into my gun and took a deep breath. "Let's do this." Chris's POV, the rest of us were behind the piles of rubble, all saddened by having to leave Cam behind. More like sacrificing him than leaving him behind, but none of us had the guts to say it to Nate. "Come on, man, we need to get moving," Antonio was saying to him. Yeah. We should." He slowly got off his knees and we started to climb down the hill. "We're already down by one, eh?" asked an Asian guy with somewhat long hair. He was in a casual jacket and other clothing articles, climbing beside me. "Yeah. It's tragic," I said in response. "Name's Patrick, you're Chris, right?" he asked. "Yeah, that's me. Good to know. This bigger guy below me is Brindavan and the small guy below him is David." Holla. Brindavan, who was dark-skinned and wearing a casual tracksuit, says, and David, another Asian but in a more edgy outfit, just says MHM. In response, "We can all meet and greet when we get across the river," Patrick says as we descend. Terence's POV, "So what's your name?" I asked the brunette-haired girl descending from above me. "Trinity," she said with a slight British accent. She was wearing a black skull tee and a black military cap and some grey cargo pants. "How about you two?" I asked the guys below me. One of them was dressed a bit like a cowboy but no hat, and he had black emo-styled hair and a toothpick that he was chewing on. "Just call me Laz." The next one was a guy in standard gear like Chris and I. He had long hair and a moustache and had said, "My name's Juan." I could see Nate's group at the bottom. Nate's POV, "I can't lie, it felt great to be actually walking rather than climbing. Sure, we have to walk up a hill next, but I'll take that over climbing down another vertically flat rock." I was still very worried for Cam. The gunfire had ceased. I don't think anyone else noticed, too worried about themselves, thinking him a goner anyway. But I was worried. "So Nate, this is Madison," Antonio said, pointing to the ginger girl as our boots splashed the water of the river. "And this is Andrew," he said, pointing to a large guy with a tattered baseball cap in a hoodie. "TJ, Charissa, Fitzroy and Samuel are ahead of us. We should catch up with them," Antonio said, hurrying us towards the hill. I didn't feel like saying anything. By the time we started climbing, Terence's group had reached the bottom. After a couple minutes we reached the top of the hill. My joints were a little tired, but I was by no means exhausted. "Well, it took you long enough," a short black guy said to us. "Sassy as always, Fitzroy," Antonio said to him. Alright, so the short Indian girl is Sharissa, the Indian guy with the spiked up hair is Samuel, and TJ is the Arabian guy with the messy hair. Antonio says, pointing at each one as he goes. Now that you've met, we wait for the oath. Antonio was cut off by a big explosion in the distance at Tilted Towers, and we can see the building Cam was in fall into rubble. Onward and upward. Terrence's POV. We were all saddened knowing we've officially lost Cam. Nate especially. The rest of us were just looking around in the broken down houses and old shacks on this side of the river for any supplies we could get before we got moving. As we were ready to go, Nate stopped us and said, "We'll stay here for the night. I need to fill all of you in on our action plan." His tone was low, making it obvious he wasn't in top emotional shape. But regardless, we kept to his orders and set up a camp, hidden from the sights of Tilted Towers. The night came and we had tents and a campfire up with me, Laz, Andrew and David on watch. However, Nate soon beckons us over to discuss the plan. When all of us get to him by the campfire, we wait patiently and quietly for his command. There's only 15 or so of us, and God knows how many of the enemy. Therefore, we should part ways in groups of 6. I was waiting for him to finish, but some of the others were already rejecting the idea. "Let me finish." Nate raised his voice and everyone quieted down. "If our entire group gets caught between a large force, we're screwed. A group this big is also too easy to track. So we're splitting into groups of 6, Terrence, Chris, Samuel, David and Juan. You're with me. Antonio will be taking Maddie, Patrick, Fitzroy, and Laz. Andrew, Brindavern, Trinity, Sharissa, and TJ will have your own group." Everyone just looked at their group members. During the time we set up the camp, we had all gotten to know each other a little bit. At the very least we knew each other's names and faces. Get your rest, we're all parting ways at dawn. Chris's POV. I had a hard time sleeping last night, but the morning finally came. From what I understand, there were a couple close calls with enemy patrol, but our night watchman had it covered. Antonio and Juan are cooking up some food for everybody. Normally this type of thing would be a loud fun trip. But with the threat of death around every corner, there's no room for fun. We sat and ate as the sun started coming up and quickly finished. I guess the stress made us all hungry. The time came and we were all ready to part ways, ready as we'll ever be. Okay, so my group will head around Tomato Town into the left of Wailing Woods, so first north then east. Antonio and his will head straight through Dusty Depot, through the tunnel, taking the stairway up the mountain and straight into Wailing Woods. Andrews, east into Retail Row and north through the Lonely Lodge and into Wailing Woods. Nate stated. He waited to see if any of us had a response, but we didn't. Good, we'll meet up at the northeast edge of the island and take the 3 different bridges towards the mountains. Finish what you're doing. We all leave in 5 minutes. He walked back towards his tent and entered. Patrick approached me and patted me on the back. "Seems like it'll be a while before we see each other again. Best of luck, lad," he says before returning to his group. I decide to check on Nate. I still don't think he's doing too well. I enter his tent and say, "Hey mate." "Hey." He responds quietly, "If you need to vent you can." I tell him, "It's my fault, I should have known it was too risky." Yeah, it's partially because Cam was a reckless dumbass who doesn't know what he's doing and only cares about glory, but that doesn't mean I wanted him dead. There was a moment of silence before I responded. "It's not your fault, there was nothing you could have done. He made his choice and he paid the price. But I was supposed to be his friend. Someone he could trust to make sacrifices like that for him. So that he'd still be here with us." Nate stated clearly. He didn't have trust in any of his friends. He was a selfish, reckless piece of shit who tried to act better than he was, and that put him 6 feet under, and who knows how many feet of rubble. Even still, it's painful to know that I've got unnecessary blood on my hands, when I could have prevented it and had him still be here with us. He would have just been a pain on the group. Nate. Look, I'm sorry if that's how you feel, but we need you. And we actually appreciate you and your help. Cam's battle may have been lost, but the entire group's war can be won, So long as we have your brain behind it. You'll have time to mourn later, but for now all you can do is move forward, push on, move on. Go onwards and upwards, whichever way brings you closer to victory. Whatever you say. Come on. We need to get going. I don't think I really helped, but there's nothing I can do now. I left the tent and we parted ways. Time to get moving. When disaster occurs. Nate's POV: the sun was now up and we were trudging north through the hilltops. We've already lost sight of Antonio's group and Andrew's group. We climbed down to the river and filled up our canteens. Then we pushed towards the Tomato Town tunnel. How do you think everyone else is doing? Chris asked me. I'm sure they're fine. We just gotta keep moving and hope for the best. We'll see them at the edge of the Wailing Woods like we agreed upon. For the most part as we walked we were silent. All of us just seemed to dwell on thoughts, and judging by the sounds from Samuel's stomach, hunger. Tomato Town is through the tunnel. We can make our way into it and look for food. Its main attraction is a restaurant after all, I said to them. It took around half an hour, but we got there and started looking for food. That breakfast didn't really do much. Terence chuckled. Nope, it sure didn't. I replied. Okay, Terence and Samuel head to the main restaurant. The three of us will scour the surrounding area. There was no disagreement from anyone, and so, we split up. Terence's POV. Samuel and I walked into the restaurant. It seemed to be mostly looted, but I found some cans on a few shelves. Hey Terence. Samuel said. What is it? I was thinking you know Nate better than anyone else. Do you think he's a good leader? Of course there was going to be someone like this. What do you mean? Come on, sneaking and retreating is for pussies, man. We should be fighting them head on, and then who even needs strategy anyway when we got skill? I couldn't let him go on like this. Listen, if you don't shut up then I'll punch you. If you endanger anyone else, I'll kill you. Are we clear? I stated. He had a look of surprise on his face when he said, fine. There was silence between us for the rest of the scavenging. He didn't want to say anything stupid, and I didn't want to make him say anything stupid. We went back outside and had to wait a few minutes before the others came back. Sure enough they did, Chris holding a bag of supplies. We got some too. I smirked. Well, let's just get to eating. Samuel said, still sounding grumpy from my earlier threat. No one argued with what he said though, and so, we got behind the restaurant and started to cook up some food. Yeah, no, for 1'000 some odd people, it's been oddly quiet. Nate says with a gloomy face. I think they're planning on out of nowhere a huge bright light appeared in the sky and it was coming down fast. Everyone get behind something. Nate yelled out. He didn't even need to, we were already under cover. It looked like it was coming our way, but with the angle it was coming down and how low it was, it looked like it was heading for. Oh shit. Andrew and Antonio's groups. I said. Fuck. All we can do is hope they're alright. It was nearing the ground and we were braced for impact. Sure enough it hit, and all we could see in the next moment was a white light. What doesn't kill us? Antonio's POV. We saw the light coming down and had no choice but to panic. Everyone take cover. I yelled out and we all dove behind something. Maddie and I were together behind some crates when it landed. Everything was sent flying and I couldn't see or hear. I could still feel the ground shaking and moving. Curving around and deforming. I held Maddie close. I was determined not to lose anyone, but I could only hope for the others. Once I could finally see again, I could tell that some things were still landing. Including the thin steel pipe that flew into my abdominal region. And a crate hit my head and knocked me out cold. I grunted in pain when I came to. Maddie was with me tending to the wound and gasped once I showed signs of my awakening. Sit still, I'm still cleaning the wound. Luckily for you it didn't puncture anything important. I sighed a heavy breath of both pain and relief. Any sign of the others? I asked her. Laz went into the crater to look around. Other than that we haven't seen anyone. I glanced around at everything okay and I couldn't believe how destroyed it all was. It was dusty depot no more and now just a crispy crater. We're gonna need to get moving soon, I declared. You need your rest. Let's just wait on Laz. It's all up to him to find the others, she insisted. I hated the idea of being useless, but I couldn't fight back, so I sighed once more. Fine. Patrick's POV. The blast threw me away from the others. I was pinned down with no room to get up and my vision was blurry. There was fire nearby and I had to get out. Thinking quickly, I crawled, doing my best to get out. As I crawled, my vision cleared a bit and it turned out I was in the crater, underneath some shelves from what is now left of the warehouses. I crawled with all my might, able to tell that the shelf would collapse any second. Right before it did though, I got out and picked my suppressed pistol up off the ground. It was scratched but not broken. I used some of my bandages to cover my scrapes and that's when I saw it. 2 people from the enemy side along with many brutally torn apart bodies. One of the 2 was on the ground beside what appeared to be a loved one. They were bleeding out but their partner was dead and nothing could save them with how much they were gushing. I'm sorry, they said with tears to their dead partner before dying themselves. I couldn't afford sympathy. My ankle was grabbed by a person whose facial features seemed to be torn off and they were missing an arm. Please, kill me. The fact they could even muster that was a surprise to me, but I spared them mercy and shot them. All these people suffering were the enemy. Yet still I felt for them. Laz's POV. I found Fitzroy safe and sound but no sign of Patrick yet. We wandered around looking for him when we stumbled upon someone trapped underneath rubble. I tried to help them but it was no use. It all came crashing down. As I was trying, I could have sworn I heard them muster a thank you. Seeing all these people in agony horrified me. Andrew's POV. We were all sent flying a bit by the blast but we're able to quickly regroup. We hoped the best for the other groups as we got all our things together, not wanting to say a word. We all had our worries but we didn't want to increase anyone else's. I found a victim of the blast from the enemy. He was hurt bad. Hang on, I'll help you, I said. Don't worry about it. I'm dead anyway. Besides, why would you help an enemy? He whispered. Ignoring his request, I started to bandage him up. Because I'm not heartless. There's so much I want to say, to do, but so little time. He continued to talk and I could tell he was a goner no matter what I tried. He gripped my wrist as everyone watched behind me, saddened by these events. Never let any of these deaths be for nothing, he told me with his dying breaths. Watching that man die brought me to a sudden realization. These aren't just enemies, they're people too, who want their freedom to live. And yet here we are denying it from them, who gave us that right. I couldn't help it, I broke down into tears. No one judged me for it. I got back on my feet with a new initiative. I'd win this with honor and I won't forget anyone who had to die for my drive to live. I stood tall and walked forward strongly, coming face to face with a new enemy. Hello there, the woman said with the most annoying voice possible from inside her robotic mech. She was easily 5 times our size in that thing and armed to the teeth. Hope you enjoyed the light show, cause it's last thing you're going to see, she said as she prepared her suit's miniguns. I walked forward, pumping my shotgun at the ready with a final tear rolling off my cheek. I wasn't dying here today. I was more determined than ever to make everything I do have meaning. That meteor taught me a valuable lesson as I stepped into this fight. I didn't die from it, and you know what they say. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Taking flight. Nate's POV. The flash soon disappeared and I looked around. Everyone was still here with me. After it landed, the entire earth shook. The first person up with me was David. What the hell was that? Meteor. Looks like it hit Dusty Depot, I responded. I took a look around and found Juan. Juan, you doing okay? I asked. He slowly got up and panted a bit. Yeah, I'm good, man. We looked around for the others. Samuel, Terrence, and Chris were all close by. You think the others are okay? Juan asked. Andrew's group probably, but Antonio's. We're just gonna have to hope for the best. I could see the look of disappointment in Juan's face. The rest of us were brought down by it just as much, but it was the sad truth. We pressed on upwards into the Wailing Woods. It was a dark place but not too dark. It'd be tough to get through here if it were night, but thankfully there's still a few hours till then. We had looted all we could from small places on the way here. Chris spotted some good hidden stuff with his keen eye. An M249 saw LMG behind a shelf. Some Semtex grenades and even a farmer's F1 burst rifle. Along with many other types of supplies. We divided them evenly and kept moving. "Doesn't it seem quiet to you?" David asked. And now that he mentioned it, it did. That's when I came to the horrible realization. We walked into a trap. Antonio's POV. We all regrouped inside the crater. Maddie helped me patch up my wound good, but the slide down was still pretty painful. "So everyone is okay?" I asked Maddie and she gave me a gleeful nod. Beside us were Laz, Fitzroy, and Patrick. It was troublesome to see all the dead bodies. There were at least 25. In the center of the crater was the meteor that crash-landed here. Such a small rock compared to the damage it's done. "We need to get back on track, guys," Laz said, sounding a little worried but still maintaining his deep but loud typical American accent. We turned around and came face to face with a wall. It was transparent and had lightning on the other side. There were dark clouds hovering above it and it was moving closer to us, quicker than I can run. "Let's move," Patrick said, but Maddie beckoned him back. "Antonio can't run just yet." Fitzroy shrugged and started to run off. The wall overtook us and we could feel the pouring rain. It burned, it was acid rain. "Just go. Leave me behind," I yelled at them over the howling winds. "No," Patrick yelled. He stomped down onto some kind of rock and a purple energy started to envelop him. The three of us stared in amazement as he looked at himself. "Guys, I don't feel so good," Patrick said to us. "Don't go turning to ashes on us." "What happened?" Laz said. "I don't know, Ajuo." Patrick tried to hop over an obstacle to get to us and leapt high and far. "Well, there's our answer," I smirked. "I think we just found our way out of here." Ariel, the robotic soldier. Andrew's POV. The towering figure inched its way towards us and we did the same to it. Its guns were at the ready and we knew this was going to be a tough fight. "My name is Ariel. I am an elite soldier sent to stop you all right in your path. Is this really all that's left of you?" She cackled at us. Through the glass I could see her in the cockpit of the large war machine. We weren't getting there without being torn to shreds by the Gatling guns, rocket launchers and blades she had at her expense. No. We needed to play this tactically. "Sorry, Mom. I'm afraid we're not the ones dying here today." I fired my pump at her, doing almost no damage whatsoever, and while hip-firing my gun, I was able to hide behind a truck with the group as her miniguns fired relentlessly at us. "We need a plan," Brindavan yelled out. "TJ's still got those clingy grenade things, right?" I asked. He nodded and pulled them out. They were makeshift grenades on a stick of what appeared to be a plunger. "You think that'll work?" Trinity asked. We didn't have much time, she was tearing through the truck. "Only one way to find out," TJ yelled. He broke cover and tossed them, clinging one to the gun on the right arm and the other on the leg. She focused her fire on him, giving the rest of us room to fire right after her gun was disabled and the leg was blown out. Charissa was the first to leave cover and focused her shots on the elbow's blades. She shot one apart when Ariel turned towards her and fired a grenade from her remaining arm. Trinity ran in behind Charissa, using her gun like a baseball bat. She knocked the grenade back into Ariel's other leg. It wasn't disabled, but it left room for me to shoot at her. It soon became obvious that this was no skilled soldier but only some controlling a powerful machine. I pulled out my PSG-1 sniper rifle and took aim. My bullet flew through the air and took effect. Her other robotic leg collapsed and with it the rest of the machine. It was smoking but she still had control. She sent explosives at each of us. I saw one knock TJ back and before I could go help, He got back up and continued laying down fire. With the amount of gunfire we shot at it, we were finally able to take down the final arm and reign victorious. We went at ease but stayed somewhat cautious, knowing that all the sound was bound to catch attention from plenty of people. We walked towards the ruined machine ready to kill its owner. But they had one final trick up their sleeve. They kicked down the glass and fired a bunch of small blades from inside the cockpit. About 20 of them flew and we all took cover. Not all of us were lucky though. Charissa. I yelled as I saw her clutching at her chest. I could hear her breathing heavily as I ran to her. Brindavan's POV: this slimy piece of shit tried to slip away once all of our attention was turned to Charissa. I wouldn't let that happen though. I went up to them and grabbed them, spun then around and delivered a heavy hook to their face, sending them to the ground. I stomped on them and crushed their hand beneath my boot. They just hurt my friend and now they're going to suffer for it. I've always had the urge to inflict pain, but only now has something set me loose. I pulled out my handgun and shot their ankle, causing them to scream. Now they couldn't run off. I dragged her to a tree and threw her into it, robbing them of the breath for their screaming. I picked them up and pressed them against the tree, while using the other hand to exchange my gun for my survival knife. You're going to feel the pain of a blade yourself now. I gritted my teeth as I sliced long cuts across their abdomen and they plead for mercy. The audacity of this angered me. Please, spare me, they yelled. I sheathed the blade and punched them in the face repeatedly. The skin on my knuckles tore and blood dripped from their face and got on my hand more and more as I continued. Again. And again. And again. And again. Andrew's POV: I had to run up to Brindavan to stop him. He had gone too far, he had almost punched into the skull. Ariel has been dead for a while now. Stop! I yelled and pulled him off. We both fell to the floor. Ariel's bloody pulp of a body thudding on the floor as Brindavan panted. Neither of us spoke for a couple minutes and Trinity and TJ watched from a distance. Brindavan, I said. As he turned to me I could see the grief in his eyes, forming as it had just done in ours. He already knew what I was about to tell him. She's gone. None left behind. Patrick's POV: after we all crushed a rock of our own we started hopping, Antonio in the lead and we all followed behind. Maddie by his side and Laz and I behind as them. Fitzroy ran off instead of helping us and now we know if we find him we can't rely on him. I personally would let him live even after this, one more person killing people on the other team. Even if it's to help themselves. We were able to use this new ability to fly out of the crater. The storm wall is just 50 meters ahead. Antonio yelled out. We were about to float our way out when suddenly, we lost the ability to do so. What happened? Laz asked. I don't know. But we gotta get out. Antonio yelled back. We ran forward, Laz taking point as Maddie and I ran with Antonio to support him. The end of the wall was near and my skin burned from the rain. I could tell the others were feeling too, yet somehow we managed to pull up the determination to trudge forward. Come on guys. The end is in sight. Antonio shouted out. To my surprise he was the one pushing the most. Somehow he was trying just as hard as the rest of us and yet he was injured, we weren't. Finally we made it out of that storm. We all sat to catch our breath outside of it. We're all here? Antonio asked between breaths. I'm here. I responded, Laz and Maddie following suit. Alright, after we catch our breath let's get moving. We gotta catch up to Fitzroy. Antonio said, and it was clearly to Maddie's shock. Why? He left us to die, so for all I care he can go fuck himself out there. I guess it's true when they say gingers have a temper. As much as I'm inclined to agree with you, we need as much people as we can get. In case you haven't noticed, we're going up against 1,000 people. He may not be watching our backs, but if he kills an enemy to save his own, that still helps us. Antonio said. I could see the points on both sides in this argument, but overall it seems like Antonio is in the right. Now if only Maddie would see it. He left us to die, Antonio. Without a word or so much as an apology. How can you not see that? Who said anything about forgiving him? The two argued while I sat here, but then Laz beckoned me to come over and I was inclined to. Maybe he and I could get some work done while these two sorted their issues. Either way I could get away from the fighting, so I was happy. Laz's POV. Maddie and Antonio bickered behind us as Patrick and I climbed to the top of the hill to our left to see if we could get a glimpse into the woods despite all the trees. Aside from that, we were looking into the construction site, hoping to find things to shatter. Patrick stood behind me keeping a close eye out. Hopefully those two solve their problem, we gotta get moving soon, he said. Agreed, I said quietly as I peered through the binoculars. I don't think we'll find food and water in there, I said. I could hear Patrick sigh behind me. Maybe some building supplies, but what use would that be? I mumbled. Maybe we could magically build a fortress in 2 seconds out of logs when we're being shot at. Patrick chuckled. Ha, I wish that was possible. I smiled at his witty remark. Well, we might as well go check the place out. I can't see much from here with all these crates in the way. I shrugged. Well, what are we waiting for then? Let's get moving, Patrick said as he started to climb down. That's when we heard it, the familiar deafening and thunder-like sound. Gunshots. And they were coming from the woods. Maddie's POV. Look, Antonio, I'm sorry, I just don't think it is good idea to regroup with Fitzroy. Not after that, I said. I trusted Antonio, but I really didn't feel like he was making a good decision here. Well, I do. You see, I've lost people before. This isn't my first time in the arena, you know, Maddie. I'm a retired veteran. Ever since then I've had recurring nightmares of the same damn situation. Every single night. And I won't let history repeat itself. No one gets left behind, leaving a mark. 5 years prior, Antonio's POV. Mark and I were back in the arena again. After winning 3 in a row, it seems whoever was in control of these games couldn't get enough of us. Mark was wearing his signature Air Force jacket and yellow ski mask this time around. He was a guy who was always up for puns too. I was sporting a skeleton camouflaged outfit I managed to buy. We had a ton of money and whatever we wanted now as winners. The fame could get a little ahead of itself, but it was nice. You ready to raise our money pool, Antonio? Mark asked me. His somewhat high-pitched voice was friendly and comforting at all times on the battlefield, despite the Russian accent that could make him sound like a ruthless death machine. You bet. I chuckled. Unfortunately, that meant increasing our 72 kill count to 58 mark and 14 me. This match was special. It was a blitz match. They had storm walls that would force us into the circle of this arena, so we had no choice but to finish. But in blitz they pushed us together much faster and into smaller areas. Soon the time came for us to dive into the arena. We would land in Pleasant Park and we'd be ready to win again. Let's go, man. Mark patted me on the back and jumped. In all honesty, he was the life of the team. He was the pro. I was good, but I wouldn't make it without him. I jumped right after and dived straight down into Pleasant Park. Mark and I decided to land the center because he wanted to display dominance. There were 5 other duos here from what I could see in the air. Mark would for sure like the challenge. We hit the ground pretty soon, but all we could find was one revolver. Mark. I worried. My life was in his hands more so than ever now. Don't worry, Antonio, I got this. He laughed. Mark and I ran into a house and someone turned to him with a pump shotgun, but Mark's reflexes were too quick. He sent a bullet right through their head and slid to them, picking up the shotty and flipping it through the air. He caught it and shot the guy's teammate who ran around the corner with a burst rifle aimed right at Mark. Before they could do anything though, Mark sent them flying with a shotgun blast. He got up and slumped the shotgun over his shoulder and turned to me shrugging. See, no worries. He picked up and tossed me the burst. Show off. I rolled my eyes. We left the building and Mark walked casually through the street. A grenade was thrown at him and he caught it, casually tossing it into the window of the next house next to him. There was a scream and then an explosion. Thank God I'm the one on Mark's team. Come on, Antonio. You gotta step it up, he said to me. He sheathed the pump and took out his revolver. He aimed across the town and shot. "That's for here," he said arrogantly. We found a chest inside the next few houses over and opened it, finding an rebounds per game and a shitload of rockets inside. "Well, isn't this dandy?" I said. "Fucking right it is," Mark said, handing it to me. "Would you like the honors?" he asked. "You bet." We got on top of a roof and found a pair below us on the sidewalk. I fired the rocket and all they did was stare at it in horror. It blew them to bits and the sidewalk was left with some blood and bones. "I'll still never get over that stench," I said with a face of disgust. "Neither will I," friend Mark said. "But that was bloody brilliant." Mark laughed in an outburst. I couldn't help but giggle. We went around the place and set ourselves up with weaponry, food, water, walkie-talkies and more. But then the storm wall came in insanely fast. "Quick to the mountain!" Mark yelled out at me, and so we ran. We got to the top of the mountain, outfits being burned through by the acid rain. Once we reached a decent height we scouted it out and the circle was far. It was at Moisty Mire, judging by my sniper scope. "How the hell are we making this?" I asked, and Mark didn't say anything. "Mark." I looked at him. "I have an idea," he said. Something seemed off though. "Pass me the rocket launcher," he insisted. I didn't know what he planned, but I trusted him. That's what got me this far in life. "When I say jump, jump," he said. I saw sadness in his eyes and was confused. "Jump," he yelled, and so I did. He fired the rocket and I landed on top of it. And flew me away from Mark, and I laughed. The clever bastard found us a way out. I pulled out my walkie-talkie and called in with Mark. "Holy shit. I can't believe that worked." "I'll see you on the other side, man," I said. It was his next words that made my heart sink. "I'm afraid you won't." "What? Why?" That method can only work for one of us, and I can't outrun this." I was feeling destroyed as I balanced myself on the rocket. "No. Mark. Don't do this." "Sorry man, kind of already did." "Mark, please no. Don't go." I was in tears. I was about to lose my best friend. "Antonio. I just need you to promise me something." I could hear the rain burning his skin as it was mine. "I passed by Dusty Depot now. Promise me that you won't let any death be for nothing. We kill these people when they have lives too, so when you kill someone to stay alive, make sure you make your life count for theirs too. Promise me that you'll help me leave my mark, man." Even with these tears of sadness I couldn't help but smile. "You bet," I muttered. No response. "Mark? Mark? Mark? No. Mark." The rocket couldn't sustain itself anymore and blew. Without the fuel to sustain the explosion, it only knocked me far and into the swamps of Moisty Mire. The present. Maddie's POV. I couldn't believe Antonio went through something like this. It was heartbreaking to say the least. I ended up winning that game. After waking up in the swamps of Moisty Mire, I lurked around, still broken by his death. In my anger I shot down all 12 people there. So I retired. Only to return. From his bag he pulled out a tattered, burnt and aged skeleton-looking outfit. He stared at it in silence and tears fell. I didn't dare speak a word anymore. He needed this silence to himself. The silence didn't last long, however. We were interrupted by gunshots. In the very woods we were headed to. Strategy is key. Juan's POV. They came from the treetops, behind the trees and the maze even. We were tight together behind 2 trees. Barely able to hear each other under all the bullets flying our way. We were all keeping our heads low, waiting for the slightest letdown in their barrage. Once it came, Nate waved in an advance. "Terrence, suppress them with your sniper. Make them keep their heads low. Chris, send in our own barrage with your LMG. Juan, David, and Samuel, push with me." Nate ran ahead. I ran up with him, holding my SVT-40 rifle close. Samuel and David were 2 trees away and Nate and I were at the same one. Terrence and Chris hung back, providing our cover. Something was different though, there was fire coming at them from their left flank. It was Antonio and his group, coming in to help us out. They're alive, I said with a grin. Yeah, but neither group is out of the woods yet. Let's clean this up, shall we, Juan? Nate smirked. Fitzroy's POV on the opposite side of me with all the enemies in between was my group. I guess it's good they made it out. And then to my right flank was Nate and his group. It's whatever. Some of the enemy were running by me and one of them was lagging behind. He stopped in front of me panting and pulled out his canteen. So I grabbed him and pulled him into my bush with my multi-tool to his neck. "What's up, my dude?" I asked him after inserting the blade to his throat. The gurgling and choking filled the air, not audible enough for all his allies to hear over their gunfire. I took my blade back and continued sneaking around. I was behind enemy lines, but it's all good. They had a whole camp set up here. It'd be pretty easy to take them all out. Especially with all this C4 I found. Maddie's POV, we got this with the multiple flanks. Antonio said boldly. Just keep laying down cover fire and we'll all make it out. I kept firing my Galil down range. They were aware of our position and had to split their forces to counter us. "Laz, some sniper support please?" Antonio asked through the comms. Laz's POV, you got it, I'm in position now, I said and placed my eye by my scope. From the hilltop in between the two groups I aimed my M82A1 sniper. The trees were thick but there were some spots where I could see them. With a smirk I shot and the bullet flew through the air. After the sound of the gunshot thundered through the air, it was replaced by the sound of a bullet making contact with a skull. Patrick's POV, Laz has us covered. Maddie and I will push. Patrick, group up on Samuel and David. Antonio said. I watched as he and Maddie moved forward and I started to climb up the hill as another of Laz's shots echoed. I swear to God I'd go deaf from all the gunshots, but I'll take that over death. Once I reached the top I ran past Laz and began to scale down the mountain. Once I reached the bottom I made my way to Samuel and David with a supply delivery in my duffel bag. Merry early Christmas, I said as I tossed David an AK-74U and Samuel and rebounds per game. Where the hell did you get this? He asked. Found it, in a construction site. I shrugged. I'm not complaining, he said with a chuckle. Nate's POV from our right, Samuel was firing rockets at where they were sitting. How in hell? Juan muttered. Let's not question it, I said. Agreed. We moved up using the cover fire provided and took cover against a brand new tree. How do you think Chris and Terrence are doing back there? I'm sure they're fine. Chris is still shooting, is he not? True. Juan responded, he had ducked as an enemy bullet went over his head. So how we gonna play this? I've got 5 frag grenades. Just gotta get close enough to throw them. I looked around from our tree. Samuel was out of rockets, so that slows us down a bit. All I could see was a shopping cart and some branches and shrubbery, and none of that was useful. Actually, hold on a minute. Juan, I have a crazy plan, I said boldly. Hit me with it, he said as he returned gunfire. Hope you're ready to go shopping. I grinned. Always further to go. Nate's POV, you ready, Juan? I breathed heavily as he had himself prepared inside the storage area of the shopping cart. Ready as I'll ever be, he said, his voice trembling as he did. It was obvious he wasn't, but it was the only way we were moving forward. I took my last heavy breath and began running in, knuckles white on the grip of the cart, and gunfire rained down on us. Juan fired back with his backup Tech 9. We were sprinting in quite fast and frankly, they were surprised by our plan. Once we got close, Juan jumped out of the cart as it crashed through part of their barricades at its full momentum. We got up quickly and brought out our backup weapons. Mine was a standard Beretta 92. We nodded at each other and then walked in, guns up and aimed. Ready to shoot. David's POV, it was all set. The bear traps, the spiked trap, the bouncer pad as I called it, was a bunch of springs powerful enough to launch 4 people facing each direction. It would launch them right into my traps. So long as Samuel did his part in bringing them to it. hopefully not getting caught himself. Samuel's POV: he's running back into the forest. Get him. They were yelling at each other. I was ahead of them, jogging through the woods. Little did they know I was luring them to their death. I kept dashing, feeling my heart beating heavily inside my chest. I turned the corner and hid behind a tree as they turned the corner. They followed along the path just as planned. At least the others' plan. Mine would have been to just jump out from this tree and fight them. But I'll put up with the others for now. Laz's POV: Samuel's lead them the right way, David's traps are set up, Nate and Juan are engaged. Everything seems to be going well. Then I hear a click behind my head. "I got one of you now," the woman said. She was too cocky, giving me enough time to lean and spin myself, using my forearm to knock the gun away. She fired in a panic, but the bullet was nowhere near me. After I got the gun out of her hand, I grabbed her and threw her over my back and down the ledge of the mountain. I panted a little but then bent down and grabbed my rifle again, once again peering down the scope. What I saw was Chris's POV: they panicked and ran as I sprayed my minigun fire down range. "Barricades? What are those?" I yelled out as the bullets tore through it all. I shot through multiple of them as Nate and Juan shot a bunch of them down with me. I slowly crept forward as piles of bullet casings fell behind me. Eventually the firing ceased and the dust cleared. I managed to take them down. "Nice one, Chris." Juan came over and high-fived me. Nate patted me on the back and I smiled. Not only because of the praise I was getting, but because we all made it out of there. Terrence walked up behind us smiling as well. "I'll be damned. We did it," he said. "Yeah. We did," I said, still shocked with adrenaline. "As much as I'd like to celebrate now, we should probably go check on everyone else," Nate said. I nodded and started jogging off with them. David's POV: they all came running right into my spike trap. Just as planned. Shortly after Samuel came back, Nate and the rest of our group got to us. "Glad to see you guys are all right," Nate said. I spoke up for the first time in a while. "Yeah. Thankfully Antonio's crew had our backs." I turned back and waved up the mountain at Laz. Laz's POV: I could see David giving the all clear at the bottom, so I waved back to verify I got it. I pressed my comm button on the walkie-talkie and spoke. "All right everybody. We're cleared, it's safe to head down." I slung my rifle over my back and sat at the edge. I let go and slid down, landing with a thud. Nate helped me up as Maddie and Antonio came around the corner. I saw Fitzroy emerge from the enemy territory to come blend in like he never left, and then Patrick came in from the other side. Everyone was having a reunion, talking about what it's been like for each group and the meteor strike. But Andrew's group was still missing. "You guys have any idea where they could be?" Nate asked. "Not a clue. Just like with you guys, all we can do for now is pray for them," Antonio replied sympathetically. "Okay, well let's get to the bridge and set up camp. We all need to completely regroup and organize before we can get a move on," Nate instructed. "Get everything together, we move through the woods in 5. It seems no matter how far we get, there's always further to go." Gut instincts. Trinity's POV: we buried Charissa at the foot of the hill. We mourned her for a while and sat around, gearing up and getting ready to move out. "Okay. By now the others will probably be there, meaning we need to get moving," Andrew said. "Yeah, we're ready, let's go," I told him. He nodded and waved at TJ and Brindavan, signaling them to come over. "The plan is still the same. We head the same way. Once we get to the Lonely Lodge we head north and through the woods. Hopefully the rest of them are waiting for us there," Andrew explained. The crater was still to our left, but things were different. "Hang on a minute. How did those trees grow so quick?" I asked. "Never mind that. Where'd that facility come from?" TJ pointed at a large scientific-looking facility right in the middle of the crater. We could hear engines and movement. "Everybody get down," I said quietly. We went prone and watched as a truck and some cars rolled in towards the crater. "This makes no sense. How did it all get here so quickly?" Brindavan whispered. I don't know, but I'm not liking it. We should just get out of here while we can. Andrew said with a little bit of concern in his voice. The sun was going down and I decided he was right. If there was a time to move, it'd be now. We made eye contact and agreed on it. With that we turned around and started moving slowly and quietly towards the retail row. As we moved along, I looked back and saw a man emerge from the lead car. He was in an intimidating, full black suit and sported a neatly brushed black hairdo along with a finely trimmed beard. I got bad vibes from him. We went along further with the crater and cars now out of our sight. Andrew got up from his crouched position and so did we. All right. I think we're in the clear now, he said. I sighed a breath of relief and TJ sat down. Take 5, we still need to get to Nate and the others. We need to try and get there by midnight. Nate's POV: we were all at ease in our camp at the foot of the bridge. Antonio and his group around the campfire, Samuel, David, Juan and Chris are all in the woods keeping watch and holding conversation. Then there was Terence. Sitting on his own, loading ammunition, one by one into his sniper rifle. I figured maybe he could use some company. I knew I could. I walked over and he looked up from his rifle and gave a weak wave. Hey man, what's up? I asked. Nothing. I could tell this wasn't really the case, something was off about him. Then he answered my suspicions. You feel it too? Something just isn't right, he said, looking out into the forest. Yeah. Just something feels off. I feel like Andrew and his crew could be in trouble, I said, sounding concerned. I was concerned, not only because they're people I've grown to care for. They're teammates I need. Not just that, but I don't want there to be any more death than there has to be. What if they didn't make it? Terence asked. No. They must have. I didn't want to accept that possibility. Terence sighed. I know what you're thinking, but you have to know there's a chance we're gonna have to move on without them. I sat beside him, deep in thought. I give them till Wednesday afternoon. Until then we can just get what we need from the surrounding area. Agreed, he said. Well, Terence, we should probably get some rest. Yeah. But we're gonna need some guys on watch. I can stay. No. We'll need you at full alertness later. I'll keep watch. He shrugged. All right Nate, if you insist. He got up and walked off towards the camp. On that note, I decided to head off into the woods. It was silent in there and I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. It went on like that for a while, even past when our fires started to die out and it was time for me to switch with another. I still could shake the feeling that something was up. The person meeting me at the edge of the camp was Patrick. Let's hope I don't run into anything either. But knowing my luck, he said jokingly. I however wasn't kidding around. Yeah, heh? I'd be careful if I were you though. Something doesn't feel right. He looked at me seeming confused, but ultimately he shrugged his submission. All right if you say so man. He then wandered off into the woods. Still in sight somewhat. I walked back to the tent I was staying in and found Chris sleeping. I exhaled a deep breath and sat down on my sleeping bag, turning the safety on for my firearms and laying them to the side. I stripped down to just my pants, leaving my chest bare and more room for the sweat to drip. I fell back and lied down staring at the ceiling. I still felt uneasy, but my aching body and overactive mind caused me to feel tiresome. As my eyelids got heavy and started shutting, I let myself think the same thing over and over. Trust my gut instincts. The Reaper. Brindavan's POV: after night came upon us we all just set up camp east of Retail Row. Our campfire smouldering out as we sat around it. Andrew looked blandly at the fire and Trinity held her hands out over the fire and TJ stood up keeping watch. I however, was lying down inside my tent, staring at its fabric roof. You think we'll make it? Trinity asked Andrew. We'll do whatever it takes, he said, still looking into the flames. Well, I'm not so sure. We've already lost someone. Then there's all those people we left behind us and God knows what in between. I piped in. We just need the confidence and then we can get through it. I didn't bother responding. Something was amiss. I could feel it, deep down I knew something was wrong. I could practically smell it in the air. "All right Andrew, so what do you propose we do?" I asked. "Well, there's the radio tower near the Lonely Lodge. If we can get there we can at least signal everyone else that we're fine and on our way." "Okay. Sounds like a plan," Trinity said. "Guys, I need you over here," TJ yelled. I immediately got up and ran over, and the other two were right behind me. We got to him and took cover. We were being shot at. As TJ tried to return fire, they shot his shooting arm. "Fuck!" he yelled. The blood was pouring down his arm badly. Trinity tried to head over and help him, but once she got there, a group of 10 ambushed us from behind. Flashlights and guns aimed right at us. We all just dropped our weapons and put up our hands. All around 25 of them came and kept their aim locked on us. "Whoa whoa whoa, chill. Andrew yelled. They were chill enough to not just shoot us, they did tie our hands behind our back. Clapping came from behind them along with a low-pitched chuckle. Well, look what we have here," the voice said. They revealed themselves just a second later. It was the man from before in the black suit. "It appears I've caught 4 of you. Now I suppose this would be the time that I should introduce myself." He smirked slyly. He walked past us with his hands behind his back. "I go by a few names. You could call me John, Wick, or you could simply call me Alan. But I'd prefer it if you called me the Reaper." He turned and looked me in the eye with that same evil smile. "Well, now that I got you all, I need to think of something to do with you all." He paced around. "Yeah, like you could do anything." TJ spat at him. Alan turned around and then there was a loud thud as he kicked TJ across the face. He chuckled a bit before he spoke again. "You've got a fire in you. I like that. But I don't want any of you having any hopes." He looked back at his army. "I think that we're gonna have to teach them a lesson." "Fuck you, man," TJ said as he got back up to his knees. Alan sighed. "You just don't learn. Do you?" In between the 2 sentences he punched TJ back to the ground. We could hear TJ's heavy breathing on the ground, and I don't know about the rest, but I could feel my heartbeat go up as Alan pulled out a Desert Eagle. He walked back over to us whistling under the night sky as all the flashlights pointed at us, making him seem like a simple silhouette, a shadow. Well, I was going to go a little easy on you guys, at least for the time being. But your friend here got rid of that option. He slowly walked over to Andrew. Andrew was on Trinity's left and she was on mine, TJ to my right. He stopped at Andrew and pointed the gun to his head. From here I could see the stress on Andrew's face. As much as I'd like to kill him, it'd be much more efficient just to destroy his confidence. "Well, now will it be this one?" His face looked as if he was questioning us. He shrugged, still aiming the gun right in Andrew's face. Yo, chill, Andrew said anxiously. Alan let the gun drop down. "You're right. I'm a chill guy." He shrugged again and then shot Andrew in the thigh. Trinity gasped and tears fell down her face. Andrew clenched his teeth, groaning in pain. Alan walked over to Trinity, pointing the gun to her face now. "Well, she's been doing what I want her to do, so I'll leave her be." Then he came to me. My heart beating faster than a cheetah's sprint. It was practically in my throat as the barrel of the gun met my eyes. "Oh ho. You'll suffice," he grinned. I closed my eyes with heavy breaths, but then I opened them to see TJ up headbutting Alan in the face. Alan's army unleashed a hail of gunfire and a good amount of it pierced TJ, causing him to collapse to the ground choking on his blood. Alan laughed as he rubbed his bruised cheek. "You really like to ruin my plans, don't you?" He laughed and talked between breaths. "Well, change of plans." He proceeded to shoot TJ in his forehead. I stared at TJ's lifeless body in shock. My heartbeat almost stopped. Alan laughed and turned back to us. "This is only the beginning." He smiled at us. He turned and walked off waving his free hand behind him. "Load them all into the truck," he told his men. A group of them walked towards us, one to push us and another to keep a gun on us. One by one they threw the last of us into their truck, and the last thing I saw before being enveloped in darkness, was them locking the truck trailer's doors behind us. Patience. Terrence's POV. Morning and the rising sun came quickly, casting a warm and comforting orange glow upon the woods. Sitting at the edge of the camp, I stare into the open woods with birds chirping happily. A woodpecker, doing what its name implies in the distance. Juan appeared walking out of the woods, rifle hung over his shoulder. "Any updates?" I asked. He shook his head. "No sign of anything." "I thought so." I shrugged. "Even after last night something doesn't feel right. I don't know what's going on, but I have a feeling we could possibly be in danger. Everyone else should be awake now. Let's head on back," Juan said while walking past me. We went into the camp and sure enough they were getting up. Nate was sitting by the campfire and Laz was up talking with him. From what I could tell they were discussing some sort of plan. As soon as I got near though, as quiet as I was being though, Nate turned around to meet my eyes. He always was hard to sneak up on. "Hey Terrence, grab a seat," he said. I walked up to him and sat down by the fire. "So we're trying to figure out what we're going to do while we wait for the others," Nate stated. Laz glanced my way with a doubtful look on his face. "We're gonna send a crew up northwest to Risky Reels. Get some supplies possibly." "Okay. Well, who's going?" Juan asked. "I'm thinking, you, Laz, Terrence and I small platoon to slip in quick and unnoticed. And, this way everybody here isn't defenseless." "Well, sounds like a plan," Laz said. He stood up and grabbed his rifle from the tent behind him. "What are we waiting for?" After Laz said this, Samuel walked up on us from his tent, saying, "For me." I already said Nate was trying to say before Samuel cut him off. "I don't care what you said, I'm gonna come along. It wouldn't hurt for you to have an extra pair of eyes watching your back," Samuel said stubbornly. Nate took a deep breath and sighed, looking out at the ocean as he did so. "Fine." Samuel nodded and went off to his tent. As soon as he was out of ear's reach, Juan expressed his opinion. "I don't like that." "I don't either, but we'll give it a shot. The worst that could happen is everyone here will have to fend for themselves a little more," Nate said. It was clear he was stressed, and why wouldn't he be? He tries to manage everything, although it's a good reason to have him do it because he does it best. It's too much for one man to handle. I finally decided to speak up. "Well, shall we get going?" I asked, gesturing towards the woods. "Yeah. Terrence is right. We ought to move forward, try and get back here for supper," Juan said, walking into the woods. "I hear Antonio found some preserved beef," Laz said happily. "If that's the case then double time, boys." Nate smirked. The two of them sped up, but Nate stayed behind with me. I could see the worry behind the smile on his face. "What's up, man?" I asked softly. "I'm still worried. That we're gonna fail. That people are gonna die. That I'm gonna be the one to let them all down," he said weakly. It was obvious that it was paining him to talk about it, but I had to get those ideas out of his head. You can't keep thinking like that. It's that type of thinking that will get you killed. You've done great so far. I paused for a moment to make sure he was listening. There's bound to be things that go wrong. You can't control everybody. You're only one man, so it makes sense that there is only so much that one man can do. We stayed silent for a while before Nate exhaled a deep breath and spoke again. "Yeah. Maybe you're right. I just can't shake this feeling that something is up." "Yeah, neither can I. That's why we gotta stick together and keep our eyes open. Be patient and we'll get through this." Nate nodded and started walking forward as Samuel ran behind to catch up with us. Until he did that I had almost completely forgotten he was coming along. My thoughts raced about everything until I could get one clear phrase in my head. "Let's do this." Nevermore. Andrew's POV. The next thing we saw other than the complete darkness inside the truck was a gloomy prison area. enough light that we could see and make out the surroundings. One by one, they tossed us into cells after wrapping up my thigh which still burned with pain. I feared what they had planned for us when I heard a voice whisper to me from the cell to my left. "Andrew. You all right?" It was Trinity. I winced in pain and exhaled sharply before responding. Could be better. At least you're alive. Thought I lost you. We sat silent for a moment talking through the thin walls, unable to see each other. "What are they doing?" I asked. "I don't know exactly. I don't even know where they have Brindavan. I just know what they've done with me. Trying to interrogate me as to where everyone else is. Damn. And you were worried about me? You should try and help yourself. I've just been in here the whole time." "Heh? Maybe you're right," she said. We heard the guard's footsteps walking down the hallway and quieted down, not wanting to know what they would do if they heard us talking. After they passed and we could tell they were out of ear's reach, we spoke again. "Any idea where we could be?" I asked, wanting to get a bearing on our location. "The prison near Moisty Mire," she answered. I was confused by this answer and looked down at my wound before questioning her again. I could have sworn the meteor hit this place too. How could we be locked up in a destroyed place? They've been rebuilding it. Just like a Dusty, it seems they're quick on their work. I saw it all because they had to drag me across the yard to the place where they were questioning me. Whatever the case, we need to get out of here. Any escape plans? I asked desperately. A moment of silence stood between us. No. I sighed and glanced around at the surrounding darkness at the cell block. It was almost as if I could feel all my hope being crushed. But I had to stay optimistic, not just for myself but for everyone else as well. Well, even if we did have won, we'd have to find Brindavan first. So let's focus on that. I expected her to reply, but instead a deep, dark and cold voice came from outside. But I couldn't see who it was from here. "Well, you're going to need assistance with that," it said. All of a sudden a purple glow emanated from the darkness as a dark, clawed-looking gauntlet grasped the bars of the cell door. It turned the handle with its other hand and opened the door. It unlocked Trinity's door as well and started walking off. I stood still and it turned back to look at me. It gestured its hand as if it was saying to follow it. "The night has almost finished its time. Hurry if you want to escape," it said. With a lack of other options, we followed. Still unsure of whether or not to trust this cloaked figure. Antonio's POV. Most of us lingered around the camp. With no choice but to wait when David came running back to us. Worried something was wrong, I grabbed my gun and went to him. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Good news or bad news?" he asked. "I'll take the bad news first," I said hesitantly. An enemy patrol was around but they were taken out. The thing is, this wasn't our doing. "Anything else?" I asked, a little concerned by this. "Nothing else that I could tell. The only other thing I can really say is we need to keep our eyes open." I nodded. "Okay, what's the good news?" "Their camp had just enough components for me to make this project I've been working on. I call it the stink bomb," David said eagerly. "A new weapon. I don't need the details, just keep me posted on when we can, and how we can use it." "Will do," David said and promptly started walking back to camp. I stood there for a second feeling uneasy about the news he had given me. I felt as if something else was at play here. Something we were unaware of. That's when the goosebumps kicked in and the uneasy feeling had heightened, accompanied by a new feeling. The feeling of being watched. I turned around and I gasped when I saw a figure in the far distance outside the woods staring right back at me. They appeared to be robotic looking with a torn cape. I couldn't make out facial features from afar, but as quickly as I had seen them they were gone. I wanted to investigate, but it'd be foolish to do so on my own. I jogged back to camp instead and kept reminding myself to stay alert. Because there was clearly something other than us and our enemies out there. Armageddon. Nate's POV. We made it to Risky Reels without a hitch. So far so good, although I don't want to jinx it. Surprisingly, the place wasn't searched. I found it odd, but there were no signs of a trap, so we ultimately decided to just take what we could get and get back. I tasked myself with climbing up the screen and keeping an eye out. Anything? Samuel asked from below. He was tasked with looting the area below me. Nothing. Get a move on though. Don't want to get caught. Wouldn't make a difference, we could Han. I said get a move on. I said with a slightly more aggressive tone. I could practically feel him roll his eyes beneath me. Guy's too eager for a fight, especially one he can't win. I kept my gaze southwest for the most part, a glance west here and a glance south there. Occasionally looking out at the others around risky. Making sure they're alright and staying ready for anything. It was noon at this point and I wanted to get out of here soon. We've already been here for a couple of hours. Find anything good down there? I asked Samuel to keep track of everything. It was partially out of boredom though. A poorly made fall with half a magazine and some cloth. It's something at least. I said. Should have brought Chris, we'd be out of here already. I thought to myself. I let loose a sigh when a loud sound almost startled me enough to make me fall off the steel beam I was standing on. I quickly drew out my AWM sniper rifle I found recently on one of the bodies of our enemies. I took a look around but there was no one other than us. The sound still blared through the air, piercing my eardrums and making the adrenaline kick in. They were sirens. Chris's POV, we all stood ready to fire out at the woods as the sirens continued to squeal throughout the air. Not a single soul appeared before our sight though. What do you think this is? Patrick asked. He spoke loudly so we could hear him over the supremely loud alarm. It sounds like one of those old nuclear bomb alerts. Maddie yelled. You don't think? I was going to finish my sentence when Antonio chimed in. No, it's not a nuke. They wouldn't want to ruin their show. Antonio said with confidence. Fitzroy stood back quietly, a USP .45 in each hand, more prepared than me it seemed. All I had in my hand at the moment was a .44 Magnum. As we stood on watch, another sound overtook the sirens, a loud and deafening rumble coming from far in the west. Did we really need another disaster already? Fitzroy asked. Seems like Epic Games thinks so. Antonio said angrily. Epic Games? I asked puzzled. The overseers, or whatever you wanna call them. It's a topic for another time, just look out. He yelled out. I hit the deck, not paying attention to how the others took cover. My jaw dropped as soon I looked up at the sky. However, a missile was coming up from somewhere and it was flying high. I could hear Maddie making some kind of prayer and Patrick cursing. Then came the moment of truth. It started descending at a rapid speed, faster than anything I've seen. I shut my eyes tight and braced for impact, hoping it'd be over in an instant. But moments passed and I still heard it flying. When I reopened my eyes, I came to discover it had changed trajectory again. It was heading towards the sky once more and I almost chuckled. Until it detonated. The missile exploded high in the air, but that wasn't the scary part. The aftermath was. It tore a rift, a crack if you will, into our sky. The explosive sound still rung in my ears. I stared at the humongous crack in the sky. It glowed a radiant blue, even in the afternoon sky. I didn't hear a reaction from the others, possibly because theirs was the same as mine. Surprise and fear. Or it could be that there's too many thoughts racing through my mind. Is it a portal to another world? A crack in a dome keeping us prisoner? What is it? Could it be a sign of some sort? Whatever the case, I won't know for now, but what I do know is this is an emergency. And something beyond is happening this tournament. Chris? You alright? I heard Patrick ask from behind me. I slowly got to my feet and nodded. Come on. We need to get to camp and organize ourselves, he said. I turned and followed, looking back at the sky, knowing that I was unprepared for whatever events that were about to unfold. Buried truth. 1 hour prior to rocket launch. Trinity's POV. After the cloaked man released us from our cells, we followed him around the prison. making sure to stay nice and quiet as we explored it, trying to find the safest way to Brindovan's cell block. Not too long after leaving the cells, we found ourselves on the roof. Crouched down, we moved across the building. Once we reached the end, the man looked below to find a guard and held his hand back, telling us to wait. From his belt he took out a push dagger and dropped down, driving it straight into the guard's skull. He looked back up at us and signaled for us to find our way down. "Do you think you could make that jump?" I asked Andrew. He shook his head and let out an exhale. Pressed for options, I looked around the roof. I had no impulse grenades and there were no tires or anything else bouncy enough to cushion his landing for that matter. "Looks like we're going to have to head through the building," I told Andrew. He nodded and breathed deeply as he got back to his feet. I walked back to the ledge and signaled the man that we had to head through the building. He nodded and waved. He turned and began sneaking his way to the entrance. I turned back to Andrew and we went back down the stairs. We just had to get to the first floor and out the exit and we'd be clear of this block. Carefully, we made our way across the polished wooden floor. Andrew, despite his limping, was able to keep quiet as I peered through the window at the mass of people in the courtyard. "Trinity, come on, we gotta go." I turned back to Andrew who was leaning on the door to the stairwell. "Right. Sorry," I said while quietly hopping across the floor to get there quickly. He stopped at the top of the stairs and waited. I wrapped his right arm around my neck and started climbing down the steps. "You know, we haven't really had a moment to discuss if we should trust this guy or not," Andrew said. "Well, I don't really think there's a better option at the moment, mate," I told him. "What if it's a trap? What if he's just trying to lure us out? And what would he be doing that for?" My brow raised as I asked this. Halfway down the stairs, not much further to go. "I don't know. I can't place it, but there's something off about that guy." "You mean other than the fact that he's in a cloak covered with raven feathers?" "Just keep what I said in mind, and stay on guard, okay?" he asked. "Fine." We got to the bottom and I let him move on his own from there. As quietly as I tried to open the door, it still squeaked nonetheless. "Oh gee, could you be making any more noise?" Andrew asked sarcastically. I kissed my teeth and said, "Shut up." We were still whispering just in case, but after some exploring of the prison hallways we found the back exit and crept out the door. The cloaked man was there waiting for us, face just as concealed as ever. "What took you so long?" he asked with his raspy voice. "Shot leg plus stairs. You do the math." Andrew retaliated. He kept silent after that remark until he glared up at the afternoon sun, starting to pierce through the swamp's mist and thick forestry. "We need to keep moving, stay right on my heels," he said seriously. Without a debate, Andrew and I followed him around the corners of buildings, keeping a heavy watch out for guards until after a thankfully uneventful trip we reached the cell block. Before we entered though, Andrew had a question to ask. "How are we even sure he's in this one?" The cloaked man turned towards him and gave an explanation. "I've been watching this place for a while. I saw when they first arrived with the truck you were in. You were passed out by some sort of gas or something when they started dragging you all off to your cells about 8 hours ago. That explains why the first thing I saw next was the cell," I chimed in. "Precisely. Anyway, the point I'm trying to get across is I saw them take him here, and you two to the other. I thought it'd be better to save the bigger group first." "Why are you helping us anyway?" Andrew asked. "That's a story for another time. Right now we're not safe and neither is your friend. We'll get him out of here and I'll take you all to my hideout. That's where I'll explain everything." "Hey, we never caught your name," I said. "Does it really matter?" "Well, if we're going to your hideout, yeah, it does. Just call me the Raven," he said before turning back to the door. For now Andrew kept quiet, but I could tell he still wanted that answer. With silence between us all, we entered the cell block. Waiting for us inside were some surprisingly lightly secured hallways that we easily slipped through, as if we were never there. Once we got to the stairway, We climbed up to the second floor where we saw a guard sitting at a table on the far end of the hallway and wheezing from a cell beside him. "How much do you wanna bet that's your guy?" Raven said. "This place and moment aren't the safest for betting," Andrew said. Without a response, the Raven started moving forward with a small shiv he took from his belt. We watched as he got behind the guard and jammed it through the throat. Blood spilled across the floor and the Raven's gauntlet as we listened to them choke on it until they finally succumbed to death, and they had slumped over. Turning to our left, we found Brindavan within the cell. He slowly looked up at me and chuckled a bit. "What took you so long?" he said before spitting by his right side. It was a bland room with nothing but his wrists shackled to the wall furthest from the rusted door. His arms head up by the shackles, the rest of his body slumped down and drained from holding them up so long. "We're getting you out of here," the Raven told him. "Go ahead. Until you get the damned door open, I'll just hang around here I guess," he replied. The Raven grabbed the key ring off the desk and started fiddling each one with the lock, eventually getting the door to open. When he started messing with the shackles, Andrew called me over to the guard's desk. "You might wanna take a look at this," he said with an extreme look of shock. He was pointing at the prison manifest. Wondering what the fuss was all about, I walked over and began reading through the page, skimming person through person, until I reached a certain one. I was sure I was reading it wrong and that there was no way this was possible. But seeing as Andrew saw it too, there was no denying it. The manifest stated that Cam was alive, and as of his supposed death, was being held here. Changes. Patrick's POV. As we waited throughout the day, rifts in the sky appeared, the main one continuing to grow. While everyone else sat at the camp, I was out by the ocean, filling my canteen with all my thoughts coursing through my head. Thoughts of Andrew's group, Nate and the guys who went out to risky reels. This group's survival. We're not exactly in the best scenario here. All the odds are pinned against us. Letting out a sharp exhale, I cupped my hands and filled them with water, washing my face with it. Right after doing so, Maddie came down to the shore and sat with me. There were a few moments of silence before she finally spoke up. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" she asked me. I pulled my satchel strap over my head and laid the bag on the ground to my left, watching as the waves poured in. I pulled out a pair as I answered her. "Depends. What are you thinking?" She sighed deeply and gazed out at the open sea before turning back to me and confessing. "I don't think any of us will make it out of this arena. There's less than 20 of us against over 1,000 others. How do we beat that?" I briefly pondered what she had said. I feared she was right, but there is a way we could win this. In order for that way to work, I'd have to tell it to her. I stood up on the sand and looked down at her. "Hope. That's how. Without the hope that we can win, we won't. But with it, who knows what we could pull off. Look at what we did with that outpost in these woods, around 40 people taken out by 10 of us. Without a single casualty. If we can plow through that, then I say we keep going. You know how cheesy that sounds?" She grins up at me. It's cheesy but true." I shrug. I couldn't help but grin myself. I turned my gaze to the sea once more. It expands endlessly right before my eyes. The waves crash on the shore and cause me to think, if they can keep moving up, who's to say we can't? Well, I'm gonna head back to camp. "You coming?" Maddie questioned. "Yeah, I'll just be here another minute." "Go on, I'll catch up," I said, waving towards the camp. She got up and dusted sand off her legs before strolling off into the distance. I turned back and took one last good look at the vast ocean with a smirk of perseverance glued onto my face, before inevitably heading back. David's POV. Of course they want me to clean up the bodies around camp. To be fair, we did draw twigs and I got the shortest one. Curse my luck. They reeked and the stench wavered around the woods, lurking in any airspace not being taken up. It's also my duty to rearm or disable my remaining traps. Since I'm the only one who can without setting anything off, it was an inevitable decision. There was no use whining about it though, so I just came to get it done and over with. There were about 5, stretched across the entire rim of the woods. One of which I knew was used. The thought crossed my mind that I should use the bodies as a scare tactic, but that would just give away our location and draw more attention to us. I finally made it to one of the untouched traps and started cutting away at the rope with my multi-tool. Once it came apart and the net dropped, I gave it a few moments. I wasn't going to forget the main danger of my own trap. Bolts of electricity flurried around the conductors laid around the net for a few seconds and then stopped. A smirk lit up on my face, proud of my efficient handiwork. I collected the net and began my trek to a truck to dispose of the net. Well, by dispose I meant hide it underneath, but what works, works. So I don't question it. Once I got to the truck I started to feel uneasy, almost as if I was walking into a trap. Could it be I had one in the truck? No. I remember clearly, they were all tree-based. Sweat beaded down my brow as the uneasiness grew, forming a knot in my stomach. I made sure to mask my footsteps as much as possible. With the crunch of my steps barely audible, I slowly made my way towards the truck. Even once I got there I didn't let my guard down. But that did little to no good for me, as I soon found myself with the cold barrel of a gun pressed against the back of my head. Even as a nervous wreck you couldn't detect me. How unfortunate for you. A cold, dark and low robotic voice exclaimed. Turn around. Slowly. It said this time. I kept my eyes firmly shut as I spun around, not caring know the face of my killer. Just make it quick, I said. Although I made myself sound composed, I was far from it. Sweat dripping wildly, speedy breaths, my heart felt like it was in my throat. At least it would be unfortunate if I were here to kill you, it said. I opened my eyes and confronted them. It was a man, I presume, in a robotic suit of sorts, wearing a helmet with a screen for a face. The face in question was a reticle. It felt like it was closely analyzing me. While I paid attention to that, they lowered their Tommy gun barrel to the ground rather than my skull. Using their free hand, my attacker pressed a button on their helmet by the ear. This retracted the entire helmet into an earpiece, thus revealing their face. Black hair with a bit of a scruff for a beard and simple brown eyes. You can call me Jay. Take me to your group, I've got plenty of explaining to do. He looked at me with an imposing look of extreme seriousness about him. His flowing and torn black cape hovering stagnant by his back. Out of nowhere I felt as if my ears were being burned as a loud ringing noise traveled into my skull. This affected Jay only a little. He had staggered a bit, but I had collapsed to the ground in pain. I could see Jay trying to speak, but I couldn't hear him through the intensity of this ringing. It was painful. I just wanted it to stop. I was going through complete agony there on the ground and had no way out. I felt as if I was going deaf. Perhaps that would have been a blessing at this point. It was almost as if my ears were bleeding, but there was no blood. And then it stopped. It just ended. Jay gestured his hand down to me and helped me up. The pain was gone, eradicated as much as the source itself. They've changed something. He blurted out. Who's changed what? I asked in confusion. You wouldn't know if I told you. There's a lot of explaining to do. Come along now, he said and started jogging off to our camp. He left me completely in the dark while making it obvious he knew about that noise. And possibly more. To be continued.